Egan Bernal wins stage 16 of the Giro d'Italia 2021 on a rim brake bike. Now, what makes this so significant is the conditions heavily favoured the disc brakes and that technology. So let's just roll an intro and let's have a bit of a discussion on why we have a rim brake outperforming disc brakes when the conditions very much favoured the newer technology. Now, disc brakes have come from the mountain bike world, and the reason why they went away from rim brakes in the mountain bike world is because you get a lot of contaminants, you get a lot of moisture and wet onto the rim, and this impacts on the braking effectiveness of that vehicle. So when you move that away from all the muck and dirt and crap that's actually getting on the rims and you put it to the center, you're eliminating that away from the braking surfaces. And even though you do actually still get wet, you don't actually have so much of the contamination. And this really then increases your braking efficiency when you actually have dirt and mud and wet conditions on that vehicle. Now, the road cycling manufacturing industry has, in their wisdom, decided to move rim brake or the braking surface away from the rim and onto a disc design like the mountain bikes. Now, they are a little bit different, and they actually have had some new challenges to perfect this technology. And you see it on all of the forums, you see it on all of the comments on all the YouTube videos. You know, people go, yeah, but disc brakes have got more power, whatever that means. And they go, yeah, they're better in the wet. And I actually even agree, because you actually removing the braking surface away from the rim of the bike, putting into the center, and in wet conditions you should get more consistent and much more powerful braking. And as we know, we've all ridden those rim brake bikes and we've pulled the handles, and in the wet, those specific pads or those specific rims or that combination of rim pads, you just go sailing along and you hardly stop and you feel like you're pulling the handles off the handlebars. So why is this not the case in this stage 16 of the Giro d'Italia? Well, at that level, at the pro level, disc brakes have not really performed that well in really poor conditions where you expect them to. And there must be something to do with the way that the braking is being affected on its limit. So when you're getting to the limit of that brake, the actual pros or the guys riding must not feel that confident. And we've had a few accidents on these disc brake bikes. And I've put that down to the way that we're transferring the braking forces through the spokes when you've got the bike leant over and you've got a very low adhesion between the tyre and the road because it's wet. And it's very hard because of that extra power, right? It's not really power, it's force that you're applying to the disc. Is very hard to gauge when you've got that much extra leverage there because it's being geared up hydraulically. So we have a situation now where we have the latest tech, and these bikes, the manufacturers are charging a premium. If you go compare a disc brake bike to a rim brake bike, or a group set that's disc brake to rim brake, you're paying a premium. You know, this is what they're selling us as the new tech, and you hear it all the time. Disc brakes have more power, disc brakes work better in the wet, they're better all-round braking system, and this is the way the industry wants us to go. But when we've actually put the bikes in that condition, they're not really performing as advertised. We're not getting, or the pros aren't getting, that extra level of confidence and performance that you would expect. You would think that in those conditions, when they're coming into a corner, they can easily outbrake, and they may be able to make up, 5-6 meters, even more if there's a long downhill, as this was there was some climbing and downhill sections. You would believe that the disc brakes would give them a significant advantage, especially when it's wet and especially on the downhill sections in both wet and downhill conditions. But this is not the case. We're not actually seeing this in the real world. And I think this is actually, I actually think the manufacturers are probably a little bit disappointed with the outcome of this stage, because even though Ineos won and Egan Bernal got first position and they're, the premium team, they probably would have liked to have seen in these type of conditions a disc brake being out front and winning, because it would have marketed their product a lot better. And let's face it, the Pro Peloton is not really about riders winning. It is about selling a lot of product. So in conclusion, the real name of the game here is that rim brakes are still just as competitive as disc brakes in poor conditions, where you would think that disc brakes would completely, overshadow and outshine a rim brake bike. And we already know that in the dry conditions, the differences between them are minimal. Even if you argue that they've got more power, the braking distance, even if you did give it to the disc brake bike, is something like from, say, 50 kilometers an hour down to 0. You may save a meter. And even then, I don't believe that. I think that would just be control variances. But the reality is that when we go to conditions where disc brakes should shine, they're actually not performing. And I think this is a real, probably thorn in the side for the manufacturers. And it really shows that we're actually going to all this new technology where, even for just an average rider like me that rides in all sorts of conditions, because, a lot of my riding's just commuting, and they go, oh yeah, the disc brakes are going to be better in these conditions. Well, at the top level, they're actually not reinforcing that in my mind, because I'm not seeing these bikes in these conditions outperform rim brakes. So the reality is that we're really getting all this new tech, we're getting a heavier bike, but we're not actually getting that performance or that braking performance or that consistency of braking that we're expecting from disc brakes. Well, anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it, guys. As I always say, leave your comments down below. And, this whole actual stage was a bit of a fiasco. Well, let's just leave your comments on what you think about what's going on in the Pro Peloton with disc brakes, rim brakes, and no coverage of the race. Cheers.